Hi, it's Natasha.
And Khalil.
We are the co-hosts of
WokeNFree.
Thank you for tuning in to our 148th episode of WokeNFree. If you've been tuning in every week for WokeNFree Wednesday, you know that WokeNFree is all about being real and honest with each other and you. We talk about everything and anything important to us, you, the world, and nothing is off the table. This week, we are going to be discussing whether you should start a podcast. So, kind of like the inception of podcast conversation.
Oh, a podcast within a podcast?
See, this is going to be deep and complex and also tantalizing all at once.
Podcastception.
Yes, loving it. But before we dive deep into that, and all of that deliciousness that you just said, we do have to do one thing, which is your favorite time of the day, Tasha's monologue. So without further ado.
Finally.
Yes. If you've gone to WokeNFree.com and you have not only listened to the episode, but you've downloaded it from the Podbean app, you are a WokeNFree Nation elite. You are amazing. You are everything on this planet and so much more. So thank you. Why do you want to do that? You want to do that because by downloading the episode from the Podbean app, that is how you can put in your comments and that's how you can actually join the conversation, which is amazing. So make sure you guys do that. Now, if you're like, Tasha, I love you. Khalil, I love you. Y'all are my homies for life. But I can't do another app right now. That's okay. We still love you. Make sure that you are subscribed and followed to the show on whatever platform you're listening to. So whether that is iTunes or TuneIn or Stitcher or Google Play or SoundCloud or iHeartRadio or Spotify. Guys, we're on so many different platforms, like 30 plus platforms. Just go to WokeNFree.com, go on the listen tab, and then you'll see all the different places that you can support the show at. And you too can be WokeNFree warrior status, which is also deeply amazing. Next, share this episode with friends and family. Sharing is caring. Why? Because when we love something, what do we love to do? We love to make sure that the people in our life who are our loved ones are loving it too. So if you know 3 people who could listen to this and really have a good experience, make sure you get the word out. If you know those 3 people, tell all of them to go do the same thing. Power of 3, guys. Just like spread it out exponentially, get things out organically in a way that makes this as big and wide of a conversation as possible. Next, when it comes to social media, you can always find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, and Pinterest at WokeNFree. And there's some fun content on social media curated by me.
I would say WokeNFree, but
WokeNFree.
You trying to get on technicalities and stuff.
You know,
let's just go
semantics.
by what things appear.
How they appear. Yes, they appear as WokeNFree.
Yes,
but there's a lot of heart and love and sweat and tears that come from your girl Tosh that making it out there, guys. So if you want to support, make sure you have conversations with us there, as well as just check out the content. I think it'll give you a giggle and it'll also make you think and make you feel inspired, which is what we're all about here. Now, lastly, if you have 90 seconds, yes, like 90 seconds, which how many y'all do? Because if you ain't have a job, then you definitely got 90 seconds. But for those of us who are working, you still have 90 seconds because the day is filled with lots and lots and lots of seconds. Make sure you go to, again, the platform of your choice to review the show. So you can review it on iTunes. 5 stars. 5 stars. Thank you. No, give your reviews, but I think it'll be 5 stars. So give your reviews on whatever platform you consume the show on, because that's also how we make the show bigger, wider, greater. And also we get to hear from you and hear how are we reaching you and how is this moving you in your life? Scene end.
Good job.
Gracias.
Each week, we like to share a little bit about us before we dive into the topic for the episode. Last week, we shared, which sport event would you rather attend, the World Series or the NBA Finals? This week, we're asking, which is more your jam, strawberry or blackberry jam?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, right now, unfortunately, I'm not eating either at the moment. But back in the day, I would have, hands down, been all about that strawberry jam. But how about you, my love?
I have to definitely go with the strawberry only.
Mm-hmm.
The blackberry, it is an off flavor, and I had to struggle finishing that up. But I still have some old strawberry left, so I'm finishing that up, and then...
Excellent.
I guess I have to give it up.
Should we do an episode on food diaries? Since you like to share our eating habits and
I don't like
fridge
to.
container issues.
This is not me liking to share. This is just stuff that comes up.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
In these weekly shares, just sometimes food comes up.
Si, senor.
It's not my fault. That's all I can say. It's just things people wanted to know.
It's what the people needed to know. Huh?
That not needed, but wanted to know.
Wanted to know.
I don't know if they needed to know it. That's a whole other series. That's like a series of itself.
Need to know versus what want to know. That's interesting. Yeah. Are your needs at conflict with your wants? Interesting.
And maybe that could be answered by this next question, because you could talk about your wants and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, what are the main reasons for starting a podcast?
Oh my, there's so many. So I think it comes down to the following. You should start a podcast if you have a message to share with the world. Now, not just I want to talk for 30 minutes or an hour, but you actually have a message, some type of conversation and or branding that you're putting out there that is different from what others are saying in the world. So there's a need, there's a lack, there's no one else other than us who's woken free, right? In starting this woken free conversation. So we saw a need, so we put out that messaging. You also want to bring awareness to either yourself or your brand, because you have this ultimate message that it needs to get out to the world. You also want to increase your kind of fan base around that messaging, around the brand that you're building. And you wanted to explore a new medium outlet that is easier, I guess, maybe, than maybe some other outlets, like, cause maybe not everyone gets on television, not everyone gets on radio, but you can actually start your own podcast fairly simply. It's not too cumbersome, or there are too many barriers to overcome. So it's a new way to kind of get into a space. It's a very crowded space, but still get into the space and to kind of get the word out. And additionally, I would say that you have kind of that personality or production value that is suited for creating audio content. So what do I mean by that? So some podcasts I've listened to, I don't necessarily think the production value or the personality is suited for this medium, but I admire the effort and I admire the tenacity, because I think that's like a hard thing to judge, right? Because who's going to be like, oh, my voice kind of sucks, or I actually sound boring, right? Like
maybe some people enjoy that.
But exactly, there's an audience for everyone. For me, definitely not my jam. I need excitable, continuously, completely ridiculousness all the time, because that's like just who I am as a person. But absolutely, I agree. There are people who are, hello, you are now tuning into the next version of da da da, and I did not change my voice, and I sound
that's
like
very, this. I mean, that's great, because people need things to sleep to, so I love that kind of stuff.
Well, there you go. So if it's a sleeping podcast, then excelente.
No, but there's a lot of good information in the podcast. It's just that the voice puts you to sleep. You may be able to still like that permeate through your head while you're sleeping, the information.
The audio osmosis effect.
Hopefully.
Nice.
Maybe you're remembering it and you didn't even realize it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I believe your subconscious is probably listening, so why not? Absolutely.
See, so I would have to disagree with you, and I'd say you don't need to have a personality or production value. Yeah. I would say throw those out the window. Just if you want to make it, you can make it.
You don't need a personality. No. Can we put that on a t-shirt, though?
You don't need it. I mean, you could.
Hey, you don't need a personality.
It's optional. Personality is optional.
Personalities are optional.
Yeah, that's what people should know.
Still come to the podcast table. It's
definitely, because some people go for the content, too. Some people will look over the personality, and they really just want the content. I'm
kind of like a personality, not a snob, but just like, because I have a big personality, like I'm super attracted to people with big personalities, like in the content that they produce. And so whenever I'm like at a 10, and then whenever someone's coming at a 5, I'm just like, ¿qué pasó? Like, what happened?
Because I bring personality value of 1, so that's pretty good.
Lies and fairy tales. And fairy tales. WokeNFree Nation.
It's a very steady and stable personality.
Please tell Khalil in the comments that he is definitely not at that level, for I have to beat him on air. You know I'm Jamaican. Don't get it twisted.
Wow, the violence. Well, you can have a violent podcast, too. People seem to enjoy that.
Mother, I crave violence.
People enjoy,
Don't say
these
that.
justice podcasts.
I don't even want to look into that.
No, I'm not talking about, like snuff films. That's something else.
Oh, God.
That's not, I don't know. They might have that for podcasts.
Our craving violent creature walked into the room.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Mother, I crave
always
violence.
It always has to happen.
If you want to know what I'm referencing, check out our TikTok channel and you will see a video as by our violent kitty who shared the world what his mission is in life.
Definitely.
But what is your answer to the question, sir?
I think that it comes down to three things to me, and one is it gives you a platform to start talking about things you enjoy. So it's kind of like if you have a favorite TV show and maybe you don't have people to communicate with about, or you don't want to go into the forums and have it spoiled, you can have a whole podcast just about that TV show. And it's just something you enjoy, and it's for fun. I mean, I think that's one reason to do it. Another is some people want to speak on like the hottest topics, but they know if they speak to people in person, they'll get punched in the face. So they make sure to do it where there's no physical harm that could be done to their bodies.
Si, senor.
So that's another reason to have a podcast. And then the last one I think that's nice about a podcast is it gives you a challenge to live up to. So it's kind of like another goal that you can set. Like, I'm going to have this podcast and I'm going to continuously to do it. Like, I think that's just a good thing to have in your belt. Like, gives you something to do, right? So you can't just have an excuse of, I'm just going to binge watch.
And also, I do want to note that neither of us added to the conversation about that neither of us mentioned like doing this for money, because I think that ultimately you can monetize a podcast and you can make a nice penny from it. But I don't think that should be the intention of setting it up. I think every successful person who has said, going after your passion leads to the money, like going after the money itself is not the goal in mind. So just wanted to point that out for folks.
Good one. Yeah.
Now, next, should everyone have a podcast?
I don't think so. Everyone can have a podcast, but they should not have a podcast. That's what I would recommend, especially because there's people that are bad at commitment. And I don't think podcast is a good idea for those kind of people, because what'll happen is you may do one episode, you might do two, you might spread it out, then you do another one, but then you'd fall off, and it's kind of like, I mean, you started this thing and you never continued with it. A podcast to me is almost like a series, like a TV show kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where you gotta keep going, and they're like episodic in nature, so you can't just like fall off of it. I'd say one thing is if you're bad at commitment, it is possible to do a podcast, but then you'd have to record everything in advance and then have just like a set. This is like season 1, and these are all the episodes for season 1. And you record all that, and you just release that very slowly.
Gotcha.
And then, you decide if you want to do a season 2. Because some people do that, too. They have like these episodes, and they just split it up, and they've recorded it all in advance, so they can just release it how they want. And maybe they only do it on like a monthly basis. So as long as you can kind of like commit to stuff, then I think a podcast is a good idea. And if you're bad at commitment, the better thing is to just use social media, because that's good for one-offs and rants.
True. Absolutely.
Those lend themselves to that.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you on this, actually. I think, can everyone have a podcast? Of course. Should everyone? No, that's the question. And the reason, like I said, like you said, actually, really does come down to the commitment. There are tons that are started every single week and not continued.
Yeah.
and it's just adding more noise to the environment, the ecosystem. And at the end of the day, really this space should be honed in on the people who have made the commitment to themselves and the production of putting this out, whether it's daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever your frequency is, and commit to the process and like you said, are putting in the attention so that they can not only engage with their audience, but make sure that it's a meaningful conversation that's out there. Because there's no point to starting something and then falling off and or feeling like you're driving yourself crazy because you overextended what you are able to do at this time in your life, because things happen, right? There's a lot that goes on in the world. So just make sure if you can commit to this, then definitely do it and make sure it's a voice that is needed. It's not just more noise, but it's an actual message that needs to be shared with the world.
Yeah, that's definitely some good tips. What do you think are key things to know before starting a podcast?
Child. All right. So let's put on our thinking caps, our podcast podcast thinking caps, guys.
All right.
So your podcast journey is your individual journey. Now for us, it's a joint journey because it's 2 people involved in our podcast, but whatever the amount of participants, it's your complete individual journey. Do not compare your creative journey to anyone else. Why? Because the comparison game is always a losing proposition. Why? There's some people who will start a podcast and on their 10th episode, they have 10,000 downloads. And other people, they've been doing it for 10 years and have 1,000 downloads. Like everyone's journey is different. Everyone's production value is different. Everyone's social media conversation and marketing and branding with that podcast, the whole package is different. And at the end of the day, everything has to happen how it needs to happen. So if you go into this thinking you are going to replicate someone else's journey, you're going to be very disappointed and you're probably going to fall off and or resent the whole process and eventually fall off. So it's a bad situation. Just make sure you focus on what you're doing, your message, your marketing, your branding, and do your best. I like to say leave the rest with the universe. So there's that. Next, live and die by your schedule. So when will you post your episodes? What is your accompanying social media calendar going to be? Success is 100% strategy, execution, and a little bit of luck, guys. So feel free to tweet that little nugget. Get your life. All and right. Then secondly, really, if you take anything from this, if you're going to start a podcast, you've got to get really, really strategic and organized because it is going to do you in if you don't have that. And then, of course, next, be clear on your podcast. Like, why did you start this? Because if you are not clear on your why, and I say this as a coach, I say this in any type of content I put out there, because your why is your grounding. It's the land, the foundation that you build upon. If you don't have a clear why, then anything you build upon that can always crumble and fall. And that's really unfortunate and completely preventable. So if you have a clear why, then you won't stop in a month. You won't give up because one person listened to it. You won't feel frustrated when the audio gets messed up and you have to do it all over again. That why will drive you to continue forward into the promised land. So those are all nuggets. Feel free to tweet the whole thing.
The whole thing?
The whole command.
Can you fit all that in there, or is there a limit?
Obviously, they're going to be doing several tweets. I mean, that was just a lot of nuggets right
That's
there.
good then.
Amazing.
You gave them stuff to do, I guess, in their spare time. Besides start the podcast.
Funny as hell.
I like that you're giving tasks, like actionable items. It's good.
You know how I do.
Putting those messages in there. That's a good one.
Let's hear yours.
All right. Mine are good. Well, I don't know if mine are great nuggets to tweet, but at least they're things to think about that you can just ponder in your brain.
Nice.
Yeah. And I just keep mine to 3, just like you.
You're listening to WokeNFree.
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 The podcast that always keeps it real and keeps it honest.
And the first one is know that there are growing pains. Because people don't realize that you will struggle in the beginning when you first start. There'll be mistakes you make that you didn't realize even you could make. Yeah. And that's just things you'll live through and you'll kind of figure out your groove. So
yep, that's a great
push
point.
Through it. And then this kind of ties into what you were talking about in terms of time, but I think you just have to know that you're going to be in it for the long haul. So don't just think about this as, again, something that you do temporarily, because then there's better platforms for you to do that. It's not podcasting. And the third is, this one applies to life, really, and that's perfection is a fiction. So it kind of ties back in with the first, that everything was not going to be all right at first, but there is no such thing as perfect, but that doesn't mean you should stop. So those are my 3 podcasting tips that you can use towards life, probably.
Exactly. If I were to get another tattoo, which, some point in life, perfection is a fiction is just so true, because people, it's we chase this impossible, and it's there's no perfect love, there's no perfect podcast, there's no perfect person, there's no perfect job, there's no perfect home, there's no perfect kid, no perfect dog,
but no
nothing.
Perfect object either.
No perfect
Even objects have imperfections in them that we just don't even notice. Because you got to take things as a whole. You can't look at the minor details. Sometimes you get caught up in that, and it's whoops, that doesn't actually add up. Yeah,
as a Virgo, I don't know if anyone else has that struggle with that as a Virgo, but I know that for me, that has definitely, because we're super analytical and super judgmental. So we're always looking for the best of whatever is in X. And so when you realize that you can't have perfection, it really like shatters your whole like life image. Like you have to like build yourself up all over again. It's
That's a lot there.
Thanks. You sounded really concerned. Yeah.
My heart breaks.
Oh, lo siento.
Do you hear the tone in my voice?
Please, let's not go into acting in this episode, please.
That's me acting?
Yes, as I literally want to laugh.
As my voice squeals.
I think it is.
Here we go, yo. Here we go, yo. So what's the scenario? It's scenario time, guys. Scenario 1. Fiona sees that the podcast space is very popular nowadays, with companies even hosting award shows with influencers hosting the event. Fiona doesn't want to miss out on the popularity and decides to start a cold case podcast which looks at old unsolved mysteries. She herself doesn't care for the topic, but she knows it's a very popular podcast topic and will bring on many listeners. Should she go forward with this podcast?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. I love the name Fiona, so thank God. I feel really excited to answer this one.
Praise be.
You know, look at God. So with this, I think that Fiona, I think she's making a fatal mistake because whenever you start an endeavor that you have no passion and or real interest in, just see kind of dollar signs and publicity, I think it could be a doomed kind of venture because it's like, what's going to keep her going, moving forward with it? What's going to make her committed when she herself is not tethered and kind of embedded in the purpose and the why of what she's doing. So what I would suggest actually is Fiona not start a podcast, but maybe look for existing podcasts that are doing what she's doing. And if she feels like she could curate content or maybe publicize it or be a part of an existing franchise that is out there that she could maybe bring to the next level and you know, earn equity or get some type of financial benefit from that might please her a bit more than starting a whole endeavor, building a whole new audience off something she's not really like that keen about. That's my thoughts on that. Well, what about you?
All right. Well, I agree. If she can do the curation, maybe she can do the podcast around that. But if she just kind of do it from scratch, then that's going to be a little bit tough since she's not really into it. So I would recommend her not start this podcast, but look into another topic or look into how to curate these podcasts together. Maybe that's probably the best way to go.
And just so people understand, when you say curate, you mean look to see, like bring together a table of talent and have them guest speak on it. And she's just curating kind of like she's producing the podcast, but not necessarily having to do the content herself. The content development, you mean?
Oh, no, I was saying look at other podcasts and kind of look at what they're talking about and recommend that to people. So say, listen to this podcast because they're talking about this case. Okay. So then you don't have to look up details of the cold cases because she's not really into that. So it's like, why go through all the details when you can just recommend different podcasts that talk about the cases.
But we just like gave them two different cool options right there. So that's pretty gangster. I like that.
Yeah. Scenario 2. Osinachi wants to start a side hustle. She has worked as a telemarketer for the past 15 years and wants to earn more money. Is it a good idea for her to start a podcast?
So another soulless question. Interesting. Okay.
This was a soulless one. It seemed like soulful, like the person. She seemed like she was she had heart.
Sees dollar signs. What's next?
No, but she's been doing telemarketing. She wants some cash.
Muy bueno.
Is that not right? I mean, come on.
Okay, so I appreciate that she wants to start a side hustle. I think if you are living today, everyone should have a side hustle or at least be in the process of starting a side hustle and wanting to earn more money. Again, very admirable. There's lots of wonderful things that can be done with money. However, what is her why for that podcast, right? Like literally, is it a podcast of like, I want to make money? And like every episode is just a different way to make more money. Is she going to bring on money experts? Like I would need to understand, is the podcast essentially like her journey of learning how to make more money? Is it her journey with other people and showing other people how to make more money? So I would need more clarification and understanding as to what exactly she intends. But just like podcast money, you combine it doesn't put out something. Like you have to have a little bit more meats and potato to really move forward with that. But I wish her luck.
Okay, that's a good one.
And your answer?
Mine, I think it's a bad idea for her to start a podcast, but only because it's not an essential business to me. So if you if you want to make money,
COVID-19 way. Nice.
I'm just thinking practically. If you really want to start something that'll earn money and consistently, it needs to be something that's essential to human life, I think.
Oh, so if she was creating masks that allowed you to breathe in like toxic COVID-19 scenarios and record your podcast at the same time, now we're talking.
Yeah, I mean that could be one way to hustle people out of money. I mean that is
hustle people out of money.
Yeah, there's different ways. I was gonna say she could also start a COVID-19 podcast, and then she'll get a lot of sponsorships and listeners, and she'll talk about the essentials to have during the COVID-19
and bring
pandemic.
on experts who can talk about it and all that
yeah, experts, quote unquote, exactly.
Okay.
Quote unquote experts.
Okay.
But to me, she should actually maybe make a food truck. I mean,
it's smart.
She's a telemarketer.
When everyone's locked in their house, smart.
She drives to them, and she drops off packages.
And they just...
It's okay. They order from the app, and she drops off the packages. They're nicely, neatly wrapped up.
In her hazmat suit, huh?
She has a robot that does it.
Nice.
A robot comes to your door.
So she can afford to get a robot at a food truck. Yeah. And be out in the hot sun. Smart.
No, she's not in the hot sun. She's in Alaska.
Oh, okay. Because, I'm thinking from Arizona.
So she might actually have, like, the sled dogs. They're, like, amazing. They're leading her truck around. See?
You're trifling, Khalil. You're so trifling.
I'm just telling you the different opportunities here.
Trifling.
Lots of opportunities.
There's always lots of opportunities in life, yes.
Scenario 3. Rory is a staunch conservative who likes to point out liberals and mock them all over social media at every chance. She receives a lot of hatred and vitriol, which gets her to thinking maybe she should start a podcast to promote her point of view and expose all the liberal hacks. Do you think this is a good idea?
That's not biased at all. Liberal hacks? I'm so offended, Khalil. I'm a hardcore liberal. You know this. You know this to be true. You're shameful. Shame on you.
No,
Get your life together.
That line is too good. It's too classic.
Get your life in order.
It's too good though. It's great.
It's so good. It's gonna cause a fight.
I know. That's what it. Them's fighting words.
Them fighting words for sure. Oh my goodness. Okay. So if you happen to be controversial, would a podcast be a great platform or medium for you to share your vitriol? Possibly. It depends, right? There are people who build platforms on being super negative and calling out people like deer. I'm not filling that out, but people who might know something, people might know that, there's a couple of deer or something people that it's interesting content around that. So you'd have to figure out what you are comfortable sharing with the world, especially if you build out of intentionally controversial platform. Like, are you going to be, what's his name? Like, the radio jockey, disc jockey, what's his name?
Howard Stern?
Like him, are you comfortable creating that persona in the world and dealing with the consequence of what that means for you and your daytime employment and what that means for you spiritually and your family and friends. I'm all for people living their life, whatever that may look like and sound like for them. They just have to understand the consequence for which they're walking into. And sadly, I think you don't even know how far reaching things you do can be. So it is what it is. But if Rory feels compelled, this is a part of what they want to do, go forward with it, see what happens. All I say is avoid using terms like liberal hack, and maybe you can get someone like me to listen.
Oh, all right.
It's highly offensive.
Okay.
And your answer?
My answer is it's definitely a great idea for her to start this podcast because there's not enough of the conservative viewpoints put forward. And when I mean conservative viewpoints, I mean the points that aren't inciting violence or just trying to diminish people. Because there's those bunch of people who are just fools doing.
I was about to say, have you not watched certain network shows?
No, some of them,
Oh my goodness.
But those go on, they try to just diminish another group of people. That's not what it's about. But if you actually just point out a different point of view.
Truism conservatism.
Yeah, you just have beliefs that aren't so free and just changing at the drop of a dime. And then also there's people that are super liberal that actually want to take away your liberties. So, that's conservatives are a little bit different in terms of that. So that's why I think it's good to have the different points of view and have it out in the open, just so we could discuss it too, because maybe there's things that are just need to be cleared up. So I don't like the idea that conservatives' voice gets muffled when we need to hear them out either way, wrong or right, just to see what they have to say. That's the only way you can figure out what's truly moral. Moral is not just something that's set in stone. We knew it from the beginning of time. This is what we follow. We had a whole episode on morals, so I think it's good to get what somebody else thinks is right versus what we think is right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have a healthy, productive conversation. I think the problem is that we face on either a conservative or a liberal perspective is that people's ideas can harm others. So, so for some people who believe, abortions are completely wrong, that's literally going to harm someone who wants to have one, right? So that's where we are juxtaposed, where we have to find a way to live beyond our beliefs and to have acceptance beyond.
Accept others' beliefs.
Yes, to go beyond, but then how can you accept other beliefs when they contradict your own? So it's challenging, but I think we have to look at what's more paramount than beliefs, which is happiness and peace. Those are more important than just beliefs and ideas.
It's like somebody who doesn't believe that you can eat steak. I mean,
exactly. There are people who are hardcore vegans who think that eating meat is death of creatures, and that anyone who does that is committing a wrongful act. Right, and they're entitled to that belief system, but then there are other people who
can't impose that on others, though, and say, you can't do that.
So this is where we as humans struggle, because our beliefs get us into wars, they get us into violence, and it's just how do you can believe what you're going to believe, but that's going to offend someone else, and vice versa. So where do you go from that? You're at an impasse.
You gotta at least have the conversation and work up to why you came to your beliefs, and then...
Is that valuable, though, for people
definitely.
Enough? Okay.
Because that's why, like I told you, I mean, I don't think we're gonna be around for it, but I don't think we're gonna be eating meat forever.
Hopefully not. I think cows and chickens should just live their lives.
It's too commercialized, so that's the problem with it. It's being too cruel to the animals. If it wasn't so cruel and it was kind of we're going out there, each of us are hunting and catching, and we're not just mass producing these animals in these scrunched spaces, then maybe we could eat meat, but at the rate we're doing, it's not going to work out. So, it's just stuff like that, though. Just, you should be able to discuss it. So this person, the only thing I would say is probably don't mock the liberals on your podcast.
Yeah, I think if you intend to have a real conversation, then there should be no mocking. It should be a healthy, productive conversation. And if you disagree, at the end of the day, you've shared your thoughts, that person shared their points, and you guys can't have a meeting of the minds, then agree to disagree. And at least you've laid out the topics, and everyone listening can decide where do they lie. But they're not calling names, actually have real debates. That's why I want to watch The Great Debaters again. That was a great movie with Denzel Washington.
Oh, yes.
Oh, God, love it.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Well, with that, before we go down another yellow brick road, it looks like we are at that time again. It is coming to the end of our 148th episode of WokeNFree. What part of the nation were you representing there?
That was Planet Zerton.
Oh. I would say something, but I won't be offensive.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. That is way too... That is the liberal coming out.
Excuse you, as if you could even envision or see the thoughts in my mind.
But if I'm from that planet, I can, because that would be part of the abilities, the mind reading.
Bless your heart.
Okay.
Now, this was quite the episode discussing, should you start a podcast? AKA, what did you say it was? Podcastception or something like that?
Podcastception, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you enjoyed this, yay! If you have thoughts and comments, what you have to do, you have to make sure that you put your comments and thoughts in the comments section. So you have to make sure that you go to WokeNFree.com, that you've downloaded the Podbean app so that you can put your thoughts in there. Now, will we leave you hanging for what our next episode will be about? Drum roll, please.
On our next episode, we will be discussing why do people need to pay attention to the Black Lives Matters movement. Make sure you follow us on social media to follow along in the conversation, and make sure you tune in next week for WokeNFree Wednesday to join the conversation at WokeNFree.com.
If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please submit a topic for an upcoming episode, or just share how you feel on our Contact Us page at WokeNFree.com. So that is WokenFree.com. WokeNFree.com. Now, when it comes to social media, again, feel free to hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, and TikTok at WokeNFree. And if you're interested in collaborating with us, if you're a brand, if you want to promote your business or products or fill in the blank, where do you go? It gets redundant, guys. Contact us page at WokeNFree.com.
If you didn't already subscribe, please do, share the episode, and make sure you come back to join the conversation every Wednesday for Woke and Free Wednesdays. Remember, Woke and Free is more than a podcast, it is a way of life. Until next time.